Hi, good morning. I guess I'm the first target today, at least at this point. Hey there, I'm Mrak. I'm happy to be here this year, and I'd like to thank everybody who invited me to be here, especially Amanda Montanez and Jen Christensen, who sadly isn't here, but is probably watching us streaming, so I'm also terrified of that. But I have the privilege of working with them and visualizing science with them every day, and it's really a big deal for me. Like I said, I'm Michael Mrak, and I'm the creative director of Scientific American, and it's my job to facilitate the art and explain the science in our publication. Obviously, I do that with a team, but it's, sadly, the buck stops with me at the end. Many people will think that we just assign art to people to execute stuff. And while it sounds easy, or sounds that easy, it isn't exactly what happens. We conceptualize really complex subjects, usually with just a manuscript and typically under really tight deadlines. And there's a lot of thought that goes into the visuals that we produce, regardless of what that visual happens to be. I see Ed Bell over there nodding appreciatively of this. So one might wonder what this curious object is. I'm happy to take responses from the audience. This is a black hole. It's my favorite. It's my favorite dumb science visualization, but it's a solution to problems that we have to solve all the time. And solving problems is really the best analogy that I can make on a day-to-day basis of what we do. And it's what I really do every day during my job. But there's lots of other ways to visualize this, of course. This is one way to show actual data about a particular event. In this case, you have to read this one. It's correlations of dynamically measured black hole masses with their luminosities of different parts of their host galaxies. It's a paper by Nature, in Nature by Cormendi, Bender, and Cornwell, and it's a real mouthful, and it's also doesn't really work very well for me or the audience that we present to. So we typically look for friendlier ways to present data. Something more like this is how we might show a black hole at Scientific American. In this case, an entangled black hole. You can tell it's entangled because it's tied in a knot in the bottom. Right, exactly. It's a pretzel black hole. While the idea is based in data, it's more of an illustration to entice the reader to dive further into the story, and shows how two singularities might be connected. And of course, later on in the story, we'll go on and explain why and how this works. This is another way that somebody might visualize the same thing. This is a true representation of what physicist Kip Thorne and scientists, his fellow scientists' data actually looks like after being crunched through a bunch of computers. It was a special effect for the movie Interstellar, if any of you saw that. There are some liberties that were taken here, but it's a simulation that uses complex modeling and data. And truly all of these ideas are based in data and science, except for my dumb first one. The most important thing, though, is that all of these pieces were created by getting two types of people together, scientists and artists. And facilitating this is where I come into this process. Let me just back up just a slight bit. I really shouldn't probably be here today because I don't have, my background has nothing to do with art or science. At least I didn't think it did when I started this whole long road into this business. I studied political science, which isn't a science, by the way. I didn't know you could be a visualizer until college, I think. And I didn't understand how, once you could do that, how to facilitate the combination of science and art. the thing that helped me get to this point today was that I was always interested in things, and I was always interested in talking to the people that did them, you know, like Joy, for instance. It's always exciting to me to talk to the people who actually delve into the processes. For this, it was my grandmother that really sparked an interest in Egyptian archaeology in me. And when I was young, like any hobby, I devoured everything that I could about it. I went and I saw the traveling Tutankhamun show, and I thought it was a brilliant thing. And thankfully, it really served me and helped me when we were doing a cover story about a lost city for Discover magazine. It was a lost city that was connected to Giza, where the builders of the pyramids lived. At Discover, where I first combined science and art, we used a lot of photos, and as you may know, you can use tons of photos of Giza. This is one picture of what it looks like today, and we planned on taking photographs of the site, of the archaeological site. But in addition to that, I felt it was really imperative to know what it looked like then, not just to see what the site looks like now. Mark Lehner, the archaeologist who the story was about, had found and mapped much of the settlement under the administration of Zahi Hawass and the Egyptian government. And what he brought us was a two-dimensional map of the site like this, and several dig photos sort of like this, and an idea of what the city might contain and what each portion of it actually might do. This isn't new in archaeology, but because there's speculation really almost always about, what occurred anywhere. The trick is to extrapolate the data and give the lay audience an idea of what actually happened at the site, and be able to visualize it. I turned to a person some people here might know, Don Foley. At the time, I had no idea who he was. I was introduced to him by another information designer who I worked with at Money Magazine, where we did lots of really, really boring data visualization. So I called him and explained what I was after. And while he was hesitant at first because of the project size and the tight deadline, we had an ace because I could put him directly in touch with Mark Lehner. And so I introduced them and moderated their discussion so they could bring their best to the project. Mark provided the data and Don extrapolated it, and I directed sort of where it should go. And this was the result of that sort of collaboration. And it was really one of the first visualizations of this site and an important place. And archaeologists have gone on to find that it was much larger and more intricate than it appears even here. This was, 20 years ago, I guess. But it's important. This is why visualization is important. It allows people's imaginations to work and hypothesize what might be. And it's true in other visualization too. In paleontology or any natural science, it allows the scientist to literally think outside the box in those cases. In this case, paleontologist Steve Brusette had been investigating prehistoric species for a number of years, and I'd worked with him a couple of times on other things. And he was working on describing some new tyrannosaurids, like one named Chienzosaurus, which is a real mouthful, but playfully known as Pinocchio Rex, due to its large snout. These aren't the kind we always associate with the namesake, but it's more like a piece of its kin. So they don't all look like this, right? And so some of you may also know James Gurney. He spoke here last year, I know, and he's a great guy. I've had the pleasure of knowing him for a long time. as an artist, and we paint together when we get the chance. And he's a person with an amazing breadth and knowledge of art. He's also a really amazing visualizer of dinosauria, and this is because he loves dinosaurs. And he was the ideal person to ask to imagine what Kansas-saurus might look like. I also knew he was acquainted with Stephen because we'd worked together on a previous project and he knew him before that. So putting them together to bounce ideas off of was really easy. And so I sent him this really, really, really rough sketch, really rough. And I asked him to think up a simple and iconic idea on how to show Pinocchio Rex on the cover. But I was interested in something different. I really thought I think of covers as a way to really entice people into the rest of the issue and make people interested in the science. But I trust James to come up with a good idea, and that's another good topic that I can't really talk about right now. You know, trust is an important aspect of data visualization, I think. So he came back to me with these, and while I really, really love his thoughts, they didn't really solve my problem, which was a simple, iconic way to bring the reader into the magazine. So I re-explained my idea with the dumb sketch, and that I sent along, and saying it would be really cool if Pinocchio Rex was sort of coming down from the top of the cover and might be talking to a little dinosaur or something of that nature. And that might sound dumb again, but it's sort of the spark that gets to that point. And he ran with that idea of it coming from above, but dispensing with the smaller critter, and sent me these. I said, holy moly, I think. Mostly because this is the kind of thing that makes a really iconic cover. I was particularly interested in the one on the left. But during this whole time, he was also working with Stephen in the background, and had gotten many images of different species that Stephen was working with. And so when we settled on a direction for the cover, he consulted the original skull image that Stephen sent and revised the sketch to be much more accurate. He was using a photograph to really build the structure of the skull underneath this. And we definitely said to go to final on this because it's pretty awesome already. And so then he went ahead to finish this piece up. And this is how it appeared on the newsstand. You know what, this isn't the first time that Stephen described the species or even the first time that anybody visualized it. It was the first time that we could think of it with a personality, and it had and in this case feathers, actually in this case proto feathers because it wasn't really true feathers. But it was it's an important step in that process. But it isn't just data visualization that we do, and it's important to understand that why. We also do much illustration that's designed to entice the reader to dive more deeply into the science that we're depicting. Like the art that Jim did above, we hire artists to build feeling into pieces that we do and potentially inspire people to work towards an ideal. And we do this in a number of different ways. We use illustration, design, typography, and photography. And while the art doesn't always contain content, many times it does. And in fact, we also try to use photography as often as we can to visualize science, because there's only so many ways you can show a black hole. But why is this important to me? Being able to facilitate great illustration and photography allows me to help the next great steps in science. Visualization, and especially scientific visualization, has helped to push the bounds of what we as humans are capable of. whether it be anatomical art that was once looked down upon, like this by Leonardo da Vinci, it's helped people to understand and move the science along. Pieces like this one by Dugald Sturmer, done for Esquire, allowed a middle-aged man to learn how to better protect his heart. At the time that we produced this, there wasn't a lot of like public stuff out there, and there was certainly nothing that really described the bits and pieces of the heart. And then this amazing piece by AXS Medical really broke new ground by showing the most comprehensive workings and the science of the placenta. And my staff, Jen Christensen, and AXS Medical and other people worked diligently and very hard to make this the most comprehensive image to date about this. Natural illustrations by artists, both in and out of the sciences, document the amazing abundance of creatures in the sea, how tyrannosaurids fit better into their family tree, and the wonders of the biological world that are too small to really see. Pieces like this one by Lucien Rudeau in 1930 hypothesized how Rhea, the moon of Saturn, might look. At the time, there were only telescopic images from Earth of Saturn's moons, so it was really up to the artist to make an educated guess as to what this moon looked like. And today, Ron Miller uses the same type of illustration style and updates it with real scientific knowledge that has been gathered to show a more accurate picture of the same place. We still may not have good photographs, so it's really important sometimes to still utilize illustration in order to show these things. And we can use data visualization to show that science is not a static thing, but moving and growing in time. This piece by Charles Darwin, who you might know, shows how species evolve over time, and of course was a revolutionary thought then. It can also illuminate the differences based around gender inequality, and using data, it shows that we as humans can be better people. We can stop time to see the mechanics of living things like Edward Muybridge did with photography. This one was taken in 1887. And we could show how disease can be cultured and cured. I love illustration and photography, and luckily at Scientific American, we have a great legacy in using it. I mean, I followed in Ed's footsteps, so I'm a happy person that way. The best part of the legacy is watching what seems to be crazy thoughts become reality. And this is why I try to connect scientists and artists. To illustrate the impact that art can have with science, I'll leave you with this. In 1977, a little film came out that some of you might have seen. It changed what many people thought was possible, including me. It was a galaxy inhabited by people and robots and alien creatures. But it made people believe that there was a future, that could be a future like this, and inspired people to really rethink how things were done at the time. And it's really why today we're able to walk around using cell phones, and why this robot can take a selfie of itself on Mars. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate being here. It was really fun.